Hi everybody. It's great to see so many people here, particularly when it's such an important sort of discussion point as this. As Leon says, my name's Dave Sollberger, and I currently work as optimization specialist at Farnell. So I'm helping Farnell really to drive the use of rapid research and experimentation methods so that we can deliver high performance experiences for our customers in the electronics distribution sector. But prior to that, I've been fortunate to work in many different roles with digital products. And I've been able to see not only how technology and e-commerce has developed sort of over the years, but also how the expectations of our customers and users has changed as they interact and navigate through that online environment. And so as Simon said there, as he closed there, that it's all about the customers. That's why I'm so excited to be here and hopefully show why I believe that delivering an optimal experience is not just important, but it's critical for modern business to succeed. So I'm going to share my screen, if I can sort the technology, and hopefully just walk through a few slides and a few thoughts that I've got with the objective, really, over the next few minutes, together, we're hopefully going to understand how win-win relationships exist between good user experiences and commercial success. We're going to learn why a user-centered approach can multiply our optimization efforts and really magnify that investment. And I'm hoping to show you a few practical techniques or strategies that I've learned over my career for how we can realize commercial success through optimization activity. So let's start. Optimal user experience. That's quite a grand phrase, isn't it? So what do we mean by user experience optimization? What is it? Well, quite simply, it's to better understand the environment in which our customers are interacting with our brands, our products, and our services. And then we apply that insight to enhance the experience in such a way that it delivers an effective response for customers and it drives our own commercial goals. Especially when we talk about digital products and websites and native apps, UX, or the user experience, is still closely associated with the design, the look and feel of a product. But again, as Simon explained, so well this morning, customer experience and UX runs much deeper for that. For me, an optimal user experience is one that meets the needs and expectations of our users in a relevant way. It offers products and services that are desirable, valuable, and credible, and it provides features and functions that are not only usable, but they have to be highly useful. So great. We can get an optimal experience, but does that really matter? A customer's not, used to. As Simon says, websites follow similar patterns. Customers they know how to shop online. Does it really make a difference why we invest and optimize that experience? Well, yes, it does. There's loads of studies now out there that show a direct relationship between the experience that our businesses provide and how that affects users' perception, their behavior, and their likelihood to engage and purchase from us. May I check? I've just seen a chat. May I check that people can see my screen appropriately? Okay, thanks, Chris. I'll just stop that. Apologies if people weren't seeing you've missed all the incredible animations and visualizations that we had there, but I'll continue. Hopefully you get in the gist, and what you're seeing on screen here is just a few stats that are pulled together from some recent studies and those that are perhaps a little bit older that show this direct relationship between the user experience and how that affects our behavior online and our interactions with businesses. Google, among others, have shown continually that the slow loading web pages has a direct effect on how users abandon websites. In a recent study, PricewaterhouseCoopers found that 32% of the customers they were speaking to would leave a brand they loved after just one bad experience. Now, clearly, that doesn't give businesses much chance for that, that one great first impression. And these stats aren't unique. There's lots of studies that show the same trends. And so here, even as we enter the 2020s, organizations continue to invest in their brand, bringing brilliant product offerings to market. But still quite often, the transactional piece, the user journey, the websites, the applications let users down. And I believe from my experiences that more than ever, customers are impatient and unsympathetic to these poor experiences. And those businesses that underestimate the impact of good UX will remain at a competitive disadvantage if they don't seek to optimize their experiences, their offer. So how do we begin to do that? How do we start to understand what customers are saying and how do we turn that into opportunities to improve? Well, any path to optimizing the experience begins with understanding the user. That's the important bit in the user experience. It's what are they coming to the website? What do they expect? What's their perception of the brand and the experience that they're getting? What are the concerns and frustrations, and what is it that we as a business need to do to reassure them that we're giving them the experience they need? Only when we understand these motivations and what's really going on, then can we begin to create and optimize an experience that truly meets those expectations in a way that then drives our own business goals. So how do we truly find out what customers are actually thinking to start getting towards that best experience? Well, the good news is there is loads of ways to do it. We want to speak to customers, of course, and watching them is even better. You know, if we can observe customers interacting with our products, our websites, our apps, you know, customers don't always articulate and tell you what they're truly thinking. They tell you kind of what you want to hear, and they don't tell you what they're internalizing subconsciously. So by watching them on the websites and interacting, and this doesn't have to be done, you know, through formal usability studies. You know, we can do this informally and just sit down with people and actually get those devices in front of us. But outside of the more formal user research and usability, there's loads of other sources available to all of us. We can all engage sales teams, hear what customers are saying over the telephone, and our offline agents or salespeople that are out there in the field. Now, this might sound common sense, but how many businesses are actually doing that in a way that we're collecting this information, gathering it and collating it so that we can take those insights and actually use them to improve rather than just listening at the periphery of these conversations? If you've got live chat facilities on the website, it's easy to get set up these days. Let's dive into those conversations. What is it that customers are really highlighting as the pain points and the barriers that are stopping them moving from point to point or page to page as they navigate through the journey? The methods and the tools for adding surveys or feedback widgets onto websites, you know, these are much more accessible and less costly than ever. And so I urge all of us to seek out these opportunities to uncover barriers to sale and opportunities to delight customers. And just to reinforce how important this part of the process is. A large part of my day job at Farnell and elsewhere is to help the teams at Farnell run experiments really quickly so we can deploy changes in a controlled way. We run A/B tests where we show, you know, some of our audience one version of a page and another audience different versions of the page, and we can measure the difference and we can see how that improves them. We understand what works and where we can put more of our efforts into. But importantly, we learn what doesn't work, what areas are less likely to move a needle, and so that we can pivot and make sure, again, our investments and our attention are focused on those areas that do have a proven effect. Using this type of method of experimentation allows us to measure effectiveness in a way that gives us a sort of continuous growth and continue to grow over time. As part of this, I've recently been working with a guy called Chris Stroud from a company called UserZoom. Now, UserZoom provide online tools and services for running some of this feedback gathering, for running surveys or speaking to customers. And what Chris has been doing has been speaking to myself and many other people in our industry, companies that run high volume, large scale experimentation programs, to understand how this relationship between customer research, or the lack of it, affects how well our optimization and the changes and the improvements we're making to our products really is. Now, Chris has spoken to 13 companies so far and taken data from hundreds and hundreds of experiments. I think he's due to publish the results just this week, so this is something we're looking at right now. And the results are really compelling. When the changes that we're driving and making to our websites are really based on a genuine customer insight, a piece of feedback that's led us to that hypothesis, the success rates are much, much higher. We've seen that in the data overall, and I certainly see that same trend in the data from the experiments that we're running in the different teams at Farnell. And more than that, while one source of information is useful, if you can use and look at different sources, different levels of feedback to try and back up and get a more holistic view of what's going on through that overall user experience, then the effect can be even more powerful. Let me give you an example of a project I was working on shortly before joining the team at Farnell. I was working with a holiday company, and we had a project to look at the product pages for these holiday properties to understand how we could better help customers make a purchase decision, decide whether the properties were right for them, whether that was going to give them a great holiday experience or not, and hopefully move through and book that holiday. And so we looked at many different sources of feedback. We ran some surveys, we did some usability testing, watching people navigating the website. And we also ran some heat map analysis. Now, if you're not familiar with this, it's simply a way of visualizing some of the interaction data that goes on the pages. So we can start to build up a picture of which elements, which content, which features on the website are getting most attention and are most interesting to our customers. Now, this surfaced lots of interesting points, that were little improvements we could make. But one thing stood out in particular that was quite surprising. Now, these are product pages. So, of course, they talk about where the property is located, the types of facilities it has, how many bedrooms, and it also mentions whether the property will allow pets to go. And what we saw is that lots and lots of people were clicking on this pets information. Now, this isn't a link. This isn't an interactive part of the website. This is purely text saying, in this case, one pet is welcome to stay at this. So why are people clicking it? Clearly, they're expecting something, but what might there be? So we needed to find out why. So while the analytics tells us now what's going on, we needed to understand why that was happening and what we could do to help. So we simply asked them, by building a little bit of code that recognized when people were clicking this link, we were able to pop up a box, got a simple piece of tech that asked them very directly a question. We don't know why you're clicking this link, but we'd like to find out. And so we asked them, what is it you need from here? What more information could we give you to help make that purchase decision? And people had, responded to this really, really well. Clearly, it was very welcomed, and it was a real mix of information. So in this case, the property allowed one pet. One customer said to us, well, they were clicking it because they knew it accepted one pet, but they had two really small dogs. And could two really small dogs be the same as just one? Other customers told us that they needed to check the facilities would be suitable for their particular requirements. Their pet had special needs they needed to cater for. Maybe they needed an enclosed garden or a particular layout. Other customers wanted to understand whether there was additional charges and costs, and that became a real friction point and a cause of concern. And so by simply digging into that problem a little bit, we immediately surfaced a number of really key frustrations and barriers to conversion at this point, which were very easily solved. So by bringing that information onto the page, by immediately addressing those concerns, the outcome stood for itself. The business saw double-digit growth in conversion through the funnel for these pet-related orders, simply by understanding a simple problem and then doing a bit of work to try and uncover what that problem was all about. So if we know how to start understanding what users need and what they want from the website and to feed into the changes that we make, how do we then start to decide, well, which ones are actually going to potentially make a difference? Yeah, we can improve the user experience, but we want to do this in a way that also delivers a benefit for our business in commercial terms. And these changes need to move the needle. So one way of doing this is to consider the type of changes that we need to do, whether they're incredibly disruptive. You can see on the right-hand side of this diagram here, the types of changes that can make a real difference, new product launches, very different business models. As Simon said earlier, websites and experiences, digital products do tend to sort of, gravitate towards typical patterns and the best practice approaches. But if you can differentiate and bring in different ways and unique ways that solve customer problems in a different way, they are proven to often have a very real chance of making a very big difference. These moonshots, though, they can give us decisive and quick answers, and they do have the potential to succeed, but they can be quite risky, of course. And if we're putting a lot of eggs in our basket for a big new feature, we need to make sure that we're working towards that and learning as quickly as possible whether it's looking like it's going to succeed. And again, we can use techniques and experiments and running quick tests to try and validate that early on. On the other side of the spectrum, on the left-hand side here, we've got changes that might be more refinement and iterative in nature. We can tweak the design or fix some problems in the usability that we've seen that customers have told us about. We might change the copy so it's more relevant and speaks more directly to what those customers really need to hear. Now, whatever approach we take, to build out an optimization strategy, it can be different for different organizations depending on how they're set up, who you're working with to run this optimization, what level of maturity are your products already at, and what's best. And so in my experience, often a balanced strategy of combining both big stepwise features where you're really disrupting the journey, along with ongoing iterative changes that give a continual sort of uptrend to growth, can be very, very successful. But whatever approach we take, my point here really is that however we run optimization, it's got to head towards really clear goals. It's got to have really clear goals, and on our path towards it, we need to expect and plan to fail, no matter how good our research is, and no matter how good the solution is that we've designed to solve it. We are unlikely to get it right each and every time. I still see very much in many businesses a culture of expecting all changes to work, particularly around the CRO phraseology, which is often very tied. We tie this and we monitor very carefully the commercial metrics alongside the changes to behavior and engagement that the changes we make have. But of course, what we're always trying to do, and the important bit is that we're trying to reach an end goal. And so we run experiments, we implement changes to take a stepwise method. We don't expect to get that first, perfect ideal experience on day one. And so the more businesses can embrace this idea of, not being afraid of seeing failure as a step on the way to a greater success, as learning what works and how, just as importantly, what doesn't work to drive improvement, then the more successful and the quicker and the more velocity we can have towards reaching that optimal UX. In terms of iterating and moving continuously towards the goal, there's one example I'd like to give you of a firm who are particularly good at this. Netflix, I'm sure many of you have heard of, and considered the pioneer of content personalization. Clearly, they're not a typical business. They operate at an incredible scale, but they are incredibly good at iterative changes and the way that they push their changes and improvements and make changes to their apps and their overall user experience. So while they began online in 1998, they began a streaming service in 2007. And one of the goals of that, they were realized quite early on, or had an idea early on, that the personalization or the recommendation of the movies and the content they provided was really key and really valuable for customers. And so one of the goals, I'm sure they had many, clearly a business like this, but one of their goals was a simple hypothesis that personalization would improve their retention by making it easy for members to find movies they'll love. Quite a simple premise. But over the course of more than a decade, Netflix have run many, many different experiments and changes to test out new ways of making those recommendations work. They didn't just introduce a rating system, then leave it at that. Time and time again, they started off with looking at the types of movies you would watch, and then looking at how that categories of other movies might be suitable. They moved on to looking at how different users were looking at different films and how that related to what you were watching, using processes such as collaborative filtering. Each step, and as the technology advances, probably getting more sophisticated and getting a bit more clever, but still focused on continuing to improve that same goal. Why did it work? So by taking this iterative approach, this chart here is showing some internal metrics that Netflix use as a proxy for showing engagement with their overall system and the rating system. And we can see year after year after year, as they've tried different techniques and different algorithms, they've seen those engagements and grow. And no doubt they'll see subscription rates and retention continue to grow off the back of it. Now, I use Netflix. I've got it here in the house, love it. I'm sure many of you do too. But something we joke about and hear quite a lot is that people often say it's easy to spend more time searching for films than it is actually watching them. Certainly, it feels a bit like that in the house here sometimes. But joking aside, that means there is a real customer need here. And why this hypothesis for Netflix is so strong is that there is a business goal to drive retention and revenue by giving a better experience, making customers feel they're getting the relevant content and what they need, and keeping them engaged with the brand and the business. And so I'll finish sticking with this Netflix film, just to look at something they've been doing more recently. And this isn't super modern. I think they've been doing this for a couple of years now. But those of you that do have Netflix, you might have seen differing artwork, different movie covers showing up sometimes, different pictures, and that isn't an accident. So as well as personalizing the movies that they're recommending, Netflix are always also starting to personalize the artwork to suit you. So in this case, with the film Good Will Hunting, if Netflix believes that you, based on your profile and your history of watching movies, you like romantic comedies, then you might see Good Will Hunting shown with Matt Damon and Minnie Driver here getting to know one another. But on the other hand, if your profile suggests that you like comedies, and you're a fan of comedy actors, then you might see a picture of Robin Williams here. So not only tailoring the content itself towards what we think might be best for you, but framing that in a way and positioning it that's going to be more receptive, going to entice you and be more attractive to you as an individual. And so maybe the effect of this will be quite subtle. Clearly, at the scale that Netflix operate, they think this is going to have a huge effect. But at the very least, it shows us how there is no average user, and that by listening and empathizing with our customers, we all have the opportunity to deliver a first-rate experience that drives commercial success. Thank you very much.